Hello, welcome to the Cannabis Investor. My name is Alyssa Boston, and today our guest is Roger McIntyre, CEO of Champignon Brands. Hey Roger, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Could you tell us a little bit how the company is structured? Because I think many regular investors are having a hard time understanding the three pillars that make up the company.
And that's a fair point. And just imagine a new franchise in the National Football League coming together very quickly. Who are all the players? How does this all assemble? Well, we at Champignon are comprised really of three components guided by our overarching theme. And our overarching theme is we see ourselves as a medical solutions company. The three components are we are a clinical company. We have clinical centers that provide treatment in the form of ketamine for individuals who have depression. Secondly, we're also a research and development company in R&D in the clinical research arena, that is being able to apply some of the new treatments that we are discovering for depression and related stress disorders. But we also develop in-house our own derivatives of ketamine and also our own psilocybin and related psychedelics. Thirdly, we have a device division that develops delivery methods for the various treatments that I've just mentioned, that being the derivatives of ketamine, as well as the psychedelic treatments that we're currently developing. So taken together, we have in fact a clinical research center, we have a clinical delivery center, we have the R&D component that's developing new products for people with depression, and thirdly, we have the delivery methods. So that's a very, very different portrait when compared to anyone else who's out there in this area.
So how did you get involved in this space? What is your background?
Well, my background is one where I went through medical school, always thought I was going to become a neurosurgeon, started in that area, at least informally, and then I thought, wow, depression, what an interesting illness. And I've never looked back. And for the last 25 years or so, I have been the head of the largest mood disorder center in all of North America by volume. And I've been given an incredible privilege by people who have these illnesses. And what I've seen is I've seen the suffering of depression. I've seen the impact on their function. And I've also seen how underwhelming the existing treatments are. And that provided for me the impetus to say, we've got to do things differently. So we wanted to set up the country and the world's largest integrated center that could provide for patients what they are telling me they need: better treatments, treatments that work faster, and treatments that get them back to who they once were. And the landscape has evolved in the area that allowed us to begin looking at this in a realistic way. So I'm a psychiatrist by training. I'm a pharmacologist as well. And I've been especially interested in treatments that can really change the game, solutions for people who've had depression and related conditions. And Champignon really, in fact, brings together the three active elements that we need to provide for patients who are affected.
I definitely think we need that in the world right now, so that is great. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of psychedelic medicine and psychedelics in general?
Psychedelic medicine goes back many, many decades, and I think it's going to be important for us to really have a glossary. Because you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that there's some imprecision in the definition of what a psychedelic is and what it is not. For example, we give ketamine, and ketamine is not a psychedelic. It is an approved treatment for depression in the United States, and it's a treatment that's been shown to be rapid, robust, and effective. Psychedelics typically means treatments like psilocybin and related molecules, and these have been around for decades. Notwithstanding their availability for decades, largely through illicit means, only recently has the US FDA provided a pathway for regulatory approval in disease states like depression. Today, psilocybin is not ready for prime time. Psilocybin's got a little ways to go, and to get to the endpoint that it needs to get to, psilocybin needs stewardship. It needs a director. And there's no question, and the FDA's been clear on this, organizations that are really the ones most likely to steward the development of psilocybin and related psychedelics across the finish line of approval are those that, first of all, have the expertise, the human capital to do this. Secondly, they have the infrastructure and capability, which we have at Champignon. And thirdly, have the track record. So, for example, my center in Toronto is listed on ExpertScape as the most impactful research center in the world in depression. The bona fide is relevant only insofar as it speaks to the quality, the infrastructure, and the deliverable that we can have for people who have these illnesses in something we plan to bring to the psychedelic space.
So there's not a lot of companies in this space yet, but for many indications, it's looking like we'll have at least 20 IPOs this year. How is Champignon uniquely positioned to stand out?
Champignon is the only organization of all the IPOs that are being hinted at in various other organizations in this area that have both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. In other words, top-down is easy. In other words, to look at the space, see an opportunity, see the business opportunity, raise money. Frankly, that's 101. Where, in fact, the rubber hits the road is who has bottom-up. In other words, who has the infrastructure on the ground, who has the experts who can develop these treatments like psilocybin and in the short term deliver ketamine. Who's done this in a profitable way? And we've been doing this in a very profitable way since we've opened. Who has the track record of research and scholarship? As I said earlier, my center is listed on ExpertScape as the most impactful research center in the world in depression. Nobody can make that claim except us. That bona fide again speaks to the capability. The other part about this is that my center, as part of Champignon, is producing research on ketamine. So not only are we developing ketamine and derivatives, but we are actually developing best practices around this, as well as psilocybin-related molecules. So we believe that the combination of top-down, which is easy, but most important, the bottom-up, which frankly is a mortal wound for just about everyone else that's out there, gives us, in fact, the strength to be impactful in a relatively short time frame.
So what does the commercialization of that look like, in contrast to drug discovery from scratch?
Well, the commercialization begins with where's the reason to believe? We believe there's a reason to believe that some of the derivatives of ketamine have IP capability. We also believe that within this space, some of the newer products, like the psychedelics we talked about earlier, as well as a related product, which is not a psychedelic, ecstasy, MDMA, which we also have the capability of developing in-house. So those are IP opportunities there. I mentioned earlier, we also have our delivery methods section. Over the years, what I've discovered as a pharmacologist and as a psychiatrist who sees patients is that we don't just need new treatments and better treatments, we need different ways to deliver them that can be delivered at scale. For example, we have intranasal capabilities, we have topical capabilities, just to name a couple, that we are in fact going to be testing as part of the Champignon organization. So we, in fact, see that in the short term, the profit opportunities begin with what do we have now, what's safe, what's effective, what's best practices. We see ketamine in that area. And at the same time, that is contemporaneously, can we mature and develop with best practices some of the other treatments we've been talking about with unique delivery methods. So we think this is a synergy that no one else, in fact, can match.
So what's in the pipeline for Champignon brands?
The pipeline for us really, in fact, is going to be looking at metabolites of ketamine as well as some of the isomers of ketamine. Johnson & Johnson in the United States has already launched an isomeric formulation of ketamine, which is expected to be in Canada relatively soon. We look at other isomers like the R isomer as well as the metabolite as being other IP possibilities, especially with our delivery method. Moreover, we believe that psilocybin and formulations we're developing are not just going to be an opportunity vis-a-vis a line of sight towards regulatory approval, but we think that the opportunity is the delivery method. And that for us, in fact, is really the synergy we need. Because one of the observations I've had in drug discovery and development for more than 20 years is that we have many treatments that were promising, but the treatment fell short because they did not have adequate delivery for scale. And we've seen this many, many times. So at Champignon, what we believe is that we have the IP capability with the delivery, and we can be very quick to test proof of concept through our already existing infrastructure that is with high volume patients coming in to know whether or not this is a opportunity or whether we should go in a different direction.
Okay, so what about the clinics? How do they fit with this novel delivery platform approach?
The clinics are absolutely essential. For example, what we learned from, for example, in the cannabis area is that the integration from concept to growth and cultivation to delivery to best practices, that wasn't a clear line. What we do know is that we need to have clinics, which we have. We have now currently our clinic in Toronto, and we're about to acquire 5 clinics in the United States within the next 3 to 4 months. We've already had matured conversations. And we're going to turnkey what we've done in Toronto, our flagship center, into the United States. This is so critical for 2 reasons. One is we have a profit opportunity right now, which we've instantiated during the last 1 to 2 years. In other words, we've made it happen. Secondly, what we believe is that the clinic has the human capital. You see, no other participants in this space have the expertise to develop these treatments. In other words, if you're going to develop a new technology, you would presumably want someone who is an expert in the technology. And we have that level of expertise, human capital, people who've done this for decades, that is developing novel treatments, not just on the clinical front, but in the animals as well. So we have the expertise to develop it in our clinics in a way that's concordant with best practice. So we're going to take this to scale in the United States. That gives us, in the short term, the profit opportunity with the existing asset, that being ketamine. All the while, we have the capability of testing other assets and bringing them to the finish line.
Okay, so speaking of the cannabis market, what similarities and differences do you see between cannabis and psychedelics on a medical level?
The biggest difference that I see between cannabis and psychedelics on the medical level is, frankly, the reason to believe. In other words, cannabis did not provide for us at this stage a reason to believe it could be of relevance in the short term for people with depression or bipolar disorder and other related conditions. With psilocybin, there is a pharmacological rationale to believe that these treatments could make a difference. And this is not just my opinion. The United States Food and Drug Administration has already designated, for example, for ketamine, it gave it sort of fast track status, and for the psychedelics, it's giving it sort of also a preferred designation status. And this indicates that government, the regulator, sees these as very novel treatments, very different than cannabis with respect to the approach in depression. The other part for us is, unlike cannabis, we have the opportunity to have patent here with respect to the DIN, with respect to the active pharmaceutical ingredient. In other words, there's aspects about psychedelics and aspects about ketamine derivatives that are not just scientifically interesting, clinically promising, but in fact, we can build a business model around through IP.
So do you think it's possible not only to legalize psychedelics for medical purposes, but for recreational as well? Do you think it'll be a bigger industry than the cannabis market?
My short answer is I don't think so. What I think is that we need to learn from history, and we need to learn from some of the lessons that were taught to us from the cannabis experience. We're seeing increasing decriminalization in some regions around the US and around the world with respect to psychedelics, and no doubt that momentum will continue. For us at Champignon, our primary interest is best science, best practices, and really targeting on the medically ill population. So people who have, for example, a major depression or have a diagnosable depression. We believe that that space is significant. In fact, in the United States, there's over $10 billion being spent on antidepressants alone. We believe that that is, in fact, an unmet need. And we believe that the safe, the deft, the most appropriate way to develop these treatments is in persons who have an established diagnosable psychiatric condition. With respect to what goes from there, we'll see. But for now, Champignon, we want to focus on the medically ill population.
Awesome. Well, how can investors get involved, and where can they find out more about the company?
I would encourage investors to go to our website, champignonbrands.com, have a look, and certainly they can reach out to me at any time to learn more about our company, our aspiration, and our very, very unique offering that we're bringing to this space.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Roger. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.